Pixar has an incredible history of nearly 3 decades, even long before the Walt Disney Company bought them, of creating some of the most iconic characters and stories that we still love today. Things like Toy Story. How about Finding Nemo or Up or Wall-E? Hey, we could go on and on and on down this list, but needless to say that Pixar is a jewel in Hollywood history. However, in recent years, Pixar has suffered from something that has plagued much of Hollywood, and that is mediocrity over meritocracy. Putting people into positions of story writing or character creation to suit a certain social narrative. You know, all the DEI stories or diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not just about skin color, but it's about sexual orientation, sexual representation, and then pushing these types of social politics, of course, in this case, into children's content. Unfortunately, this has not worked out so well for the Walt Disney Company in the last couple of years, as they have watched audiences just become repulsed by nearly anything that begins with a Walt Disney Company logo, and they're desperate right now to get back into American families' good graces. Well, recently, Pixar announced that they were dumping some transgender characters and storylines from, you guessed it, another children's piece of content for Disney+. And now those very same Pixar employees that wish they could hold a fraction of a candle to the people that came before them in terms of talent like John Lasseter are now butthurt. Let's talk about it. Renegade Online. We saw what happened back in 2022. I want to remind everybody when the whole issue of when Bob Iger had just left the Disney company and was already twiddling his thumbs. He couldn't stand the fact that he wasn't in charge anymore. Not only had he stepped down as CEO, but he'd also now resigned by this point as the executive chairman of the board. Did not care for Bob Chapek's direction. And Bob Iger made a very obvious tweet in February of 2022 saying how disheartened that he was that Disney was not protecting its employees and its fans and blah, blah, blah over this terrible bill that was going through the state of Florida at the time, House Bill 1557, the Parental Rights and Education Bill. And this lit off a firestorm of events. And one of them was that a group of employees at Pixar had come out to do an expose in tandem with, I believe, if memory serves, Variety magazine, talking about how an LGBTQ relationship and kiss, specifically a kiss, a lesbian kiss, in Lightyear was summarily pulled from the movie thanks to guys like Bob Chapek and Kareem Daniel. Well, lo and behold, later on, that kiss was added back in after the flack from the left. Now we're entering a new era where we've discussed the things we have in the past several weeks and months, that the tables seem to be turning. And that is that people are getting tired and fed up with this kind of quote-unquote DEI, woke, leftist, LGBTQ ideology, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. And we're looking at this and we're seeing, okay, now we're seeing that Pixar had continued down this road. They really wanted to continue to interject LGBTQ politics into children's programming. And there was another one coming out about Disney Plus. This was a Pixar-produced Disney Plus animated show, Win or Lose, which I think is set to debut in about a month from now. A co-ed high school sports team, I think baseball, right? Disney pulls the transgender storyline from Pixar's Win or Lose streaming series. This went through some of the details of it, and the Pixar employees that, they were not happy with this that came out. We covered this story a few weeks ago, right? But there was a response out there from Pixar employees that were none too happy. Now, this wasn't the only thing that happened. There was another show that had some environmental issues, or a movie that was environmental issues also from Disney. They wanted that pulled back. And then the creators of it were like, well, how do we do that? That was integral to the part of this. I think it was, what's the name of it? About like implanting human consciousness into robots. The point is that we're seeing now that Disney is kind of recognizing, as are many Hollywood studios, that this kind of crap is not doing well with audiences. People are really not enamored with this. They don't want to take their children to be indoctrinated at the movie theater with things that are supposed to be general children's entertainment, or on streaming for that matter, right? I mean, Mike, you were talking about this earlier with Max. He's not watching this. A lot of kids aren't watching this anymore. I think parents are keeping them away from it. I mean, is that kind of what you've observed as well?
100%. I mean, I know Max's mom doesn't. She calls me and asks me before, because, hey, have you heard anything about this movie?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm like, you know, I mean, I'll tell her what I think, but dude, this company lost its credibility with anyone in my family, at least on this side, long time ago, and it ain't never coming back, ever coming back.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's been a big part of it, right? And I think that's what's been the case. But the people, and this is the point, the people working there are none too happy with it. So this is the follow-up story. Ex-Pixar employees open up about the cut transgender storyline in Win or Lose. This is from about a week ago now. I didn't get to cover this Wednesday like I wanted to. Former Pixar staff are opening up about details related to the trans storyline that was cut from Disney's, a children's entertainment company, upcoming series Win or Lose. Ahead of the holidays, Disney announced that it was removing the storyline for a transgender character to let parents, quote, discuss certain subjects with their children on their own terms and timeline. Speaking to The Hollywood Reporter about the story, I don't know if this is like a legit title at the company or not, but I want you to listen to this and understand this is exactly the type of poison that is in Hollywood studios. Former trans assistant editor at Pixar, Sarah Ligatek, whatever. I don't know if that means like their official title is they're a trans, because I can totally believe in DEI that you're going to have assistant editors and you're going to have DEI assistant editors. I mean, this is basically how they build these companies now. But former trans, I don't know if this person is formerly trans or if they are a former employee of Disney. Commas and punctuation in these stories are important. Former trans assistant editor at Pixar gave her perspective as someone who consulted on the episode. So I have to presume that this individual is a biological male identifying as female, from what I can gather here, which typically, that seems to be the most common case in this type of dysphoria. Disney has not been in the business of making great content, she said. We agree here, Mike. Has Disney been in the... Have they been in the business of making great content anytime lately?
No.
Yeah, no. But I have a feeling that this trans assistant, this former trans assistant editor, has a different opinion of what great content being made at Disney is. They have been, she said, in the business of making great profits. I don't want to go back down memory lane here and cover the last hour of content that we just did, but you already know that that is not true. This is the problem with Disney, and these people don't seem to understand, is that they have not been in the business of making great profits in the last 4 to 5 years. This is why that they are radically shifting gears now. Not because ideologically that they are opposed to this former trans assistant editor at Pixar per se, but because they are realizing that content that would maybe appeal to this former trans assistant editor at Pixar is not what American audiences want, and it's costing them billions. They've been in the business of making great profits even as far back as 2 years ago when I was at Pixar. We, the former trans assistant editor at Pixar, had a meeting with then CEO Bob Chapek, and they were clear with us that they see animation as a conservative medium. That's a very curious description, is it, Mike?
I think so.
So a former LGBTQ employee, one that was championed by the Reimagine Tomorrow program. Remember, the Reimagine Tomorrow program exposed by journalist Christopher Rufo as Disney wanting to replace at least half of their major characters with, first of all, non-white, but then also non-straight. All this other kind of more queer representation. Remember the people talking about how they wanted to put queer and gay into everything they possibly could? These were actual Disney creative executives, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion hires at Disney under LaTondra Newton to diversify Disney. All of it, of course, went to pot. Disney lost a ton of money on this. I'm very curious here because remember, we were told, Mike, that Bob Chapek was the woke problem at Disney. He's the one that's been blamed for all this, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, it's that freaking Bob Chapek guy. He's the real problem. I don't know why you and Pro keep getting it wrong. Bob Iger is the hero that we need, the hero we deserve, the hero that will set us free.
Yeah, this was a bit bizarre because this former employee, this former trans employee, says we had a meeting with Bob Chapek 2 years ago before Bob Iger worked behind the scenes to run him off. And they, meaning Bob Iger, and I would bet Kareem Daniel, were clear with us that they see animation as a, quote, conservative medium. Now, we can interpret that as conservative politically, or we can interpret that as conservative as, look, we don't want to get into any sort of political messaging whatsoever with this. I mean, you take that as you will, but that struck me. That line struck me. Another anonymous former employee said of the situation that it's, quote, very frustrating that Disney decided to spend money to not save lives, and that the episode is, quote, so beautiful and so beautifully illustrated that some of the experiences of being trans, and it was literally going to save lives by showing those who feel alone and unloved that there are people out there who understand. So,
you know how stupid that is? That's
very
like
stupid.
That's like you going over the box office, but because you go over the box office numbers while you're eating some Taco Bell with Tom, that I feel like my people are included.
Yeah.
Right?
No, you're right. You're right.
He says that every time the Taco Bell rings, a Mexican gets his rings.
No, he gets his sombrero. He gets his sombrero.
I'm giving out sombreros.
This is the point, though, is that now you guys are dead on with this. I think it's ridiculous to even. This is the point. The people that think this way are so lost. They're so detached and so disconnected from regular society. They have no clue. It's like, look, the reason that maybe some of these folks have the issues that they have is because they're not thinking right. They're disconnected from reality completely. And maybe having, spending $50, $100, $200 million to make productions that cater to an infinitesimally small portion of the population with perhaps no other reason than to introduce more children to a lifestyle that their parents don't want them introduced to in order to create more problems, as it were, with many people in this community. I find this to be absolutely hilarious. It was literally going to save lives. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not sure how that was going to save lives. And if
you ate Taco Bell with Tom on screen, I would feel that you care about my people, and that would save that would save brown lives. Thank you.
So what you're saying is, if we did that on air, if we ate Mexican food on air,
yep,
then you would feel like that you wouldn't have to self-delete.
Right. Because that would be saving. Because here I am, the only Mexican guy that's not even a YouTuber on all these big time channels like Midnight Sage After Dark, and Value Renegade, and Charge, and Doomcock. And the pressure, I just don't know if I belong. How was that?
I think it was great. I mean, it illustrates the absolute abject insanity of these people. That again, it's like, no, I'm sorry. Maybe the problem is that there is, maybe there are folks out there that have serious mental issues that need real mental health help, and they don't need a $200 million Disney cartoon to reinforce a psychosis. They don't need a Disney cartoon to reinforce a dysphoria. And this idea that shareholder capital billions and tens of billions of dollars of Wall Street shareholder capital. Average moms and dads out there that put their money into IRAs and 401ks, into large cap mutual funds or ETFs, some of which ultimately are going to wind up in Disney. If you've got an S&P 500 fund, hey, you don't like the way BlackRock operates, I get it. But the reason why BlackRock has the power it does is because they have the largest S&P 500 index funds. So they have some of the largest voting power over most of these major financial institutions. That's just the nature of the beast. That being said, when you push this kind of stuff down the throat of America, they're ultimately going to reject it. That's where we are these days. You have to assume, naturally, that by making a statement that Disney is scrapping an episode that would have, quote unquote, saved lives, you're now suggesting that what? Disney is killing people by removing the episode, or going to be responsible for self-deletions? It's a very, this is the problem. These are exactly the kind of folks that you don't want working at your Fortune 500 company, because they are bringing their own very selfish, very self-centered, very inward-looking, ridiculous, nonsensical social politics, and they want to use your multi-billion-dollar corporation to push their political and social narratives. This is the problem with DEI. But don't worry, kids, because Joe Biden is handing out medals to people that are spending billions of their own wealth to push this type of poison down the throats of the American public. This is the problem with Disney, but it's not alone. And again, I want to make this clear. Do I think that Disney and Bob Iger are suddenly turning a corner, that they don't agree with this or they never did? Oh, hell to the no. The problem is that they are receiving an enormous amount of pressure right now from investors, because the investors, whether they like it or not, realize the fact that this sort of social political engineering with children's content is not working, and that normal people, thinking people out there that can look at facts and reality, people like on the Renegade Nation, know better. And they're going to keep knowing better. And our numbers are bigger than they care to admit. So this is why we're seeing more of these stories come out. So even though Disney itself might not be changing fundamentally just yet, which I don't think it is, I'll gladly take the small wins like this that are going to stem the tide of exposure to this type of sexual social ideology to children, to do nothing more than to breed more of the same sexual social ideology that these people represent. That's what this is all boiling down to. That's why they want to do it. And they're upset that they can no longer use one of the biggest tools in the entertainment arsenal to push it onto kids. Not saying it won't happen at all anymore, but I'll take the small wins. Mike, any final thoughts on that one? Tom?
I mean, what is there to say other than it's pretty obvious that cutting these things benefited the film, and the people that are butthurt about it are going to whine and piss and moan, and that's part of the final re. Yeah. But at the end of the day, who's still at Pixar and who's not? I mean,
right.
It's like saying, like, I got fired for doing something at work I'm not supposed to be doing, and then acting like you're some sort of victim because you did something wrong, right? And if you're going to sit there and your boss tells you to take out this trans allegory shit, and they're like, we're not going to do it, and I guess that's your job, right? Like, I mean,
it is.
What are you
going to
do?
Look, think of it this way. I mean, your job, like Tom said correctly, is that, look, this is what the company is saying, whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, go make your own studio with your own money, or the money of the investors that you get that are down with this thing. And if you want to go make a children's entertainment company that is purely dedicated towards fostering LGBTQ narratives and brainwashing out there, then by all means, go for it. Go for it. Let the free market decide. The free market apparently has been deciding and is continuing to decide for Disney. And the free market says they don't want you to be a part of it. So if you want to go do it, go make your own studio, get your own money, and go do it elsewhere. That's simple. And
but then you're not a true. But then you're not a true socialist comrade.
No.
Bad transgender commie valiant, bad. I mean, I'd like to say I really don't understand. I don't understand this emotional attachment people have to holding on to Disney for, like, you know, it's like this crappy Skeleton Crew show. Look,
yeah,
I can see how people. I'm through episode 5 now, and I can see how people can find it entertaining, but it's not Star Wars. It's something else. I don't give a flying if they got some X-wing flying through or this or that. It doesn't feel like Star Wars. It's a perverted. You know, it's not any more Star Wars than anything else. Is it entertaining? Sure. Is it a cute kid show? Absolutely. But guess what? I demand and want more. As a young 11-year-old kid myself, when I was young and saw my first Star Wars movie, I was inspired. I distinctly remember it making me have the first thoughts that I can recall of the difference between, maybe I was a boy, but I remember being a boy and wanting to aspire to be a man who is a hero.
You mean, wait, just to be clear, Mike, you were a boy who was aspiring to be a man. You mean at no point in your life did you ever wake up one morning and decide that you were aspiring to be a girl?
No.
Got it.
Well, there was that weekend in Vegas.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.